Hi everyone, welcome to the opening ceremony of the Zenrock Chain and CR Sign Hackathon. This is the first hackathon of Zenrock on Dorahacks, and for those who haven't heard about it yet, it's a permissionless MPC infrastructure for all. And also Zenrock enables decentralized key management for builders and cross-chain protocols and wallets to unlock omni-chain security. But you will learn more in this opening ceremony, but also in the upcoming workshop sessions. For us, Dorahacks, it's super excited to support this hackathon. And for those who don't know me yet, my name is Jan and I'm with Dorahacks, and I'll be hosting not only this opening ceremony, but also various other workshops. The hackathon is starting from today till the 2nd of August. And the outline of this session today is that Randy and Jason will kick off with an overview of Zenrock, and then we will share more about the logistics and the workshops. And at the end, we will go through the quest with some suggestions for hackers to get started and pointers to the docs. For the audience, if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section, either here on the Dorahacks YouTube or Binance Live, and we will answer them after the session. With that being said, it's the very first event of the Zenrock Chain and CR Sign Hackathon, and developers will be able to submit their builds from today. So I think I don't need to share more on my end. It's super exciting. There is a prize pool of 50K for the top submissions, and I will give the word to Randy Little, CEO at Zenrock, and Jason, CTO at Zenrock.
All right.
Thanks, Sean.
I'm just going to share a few slides. Just give me one moment. Okay. So I'll go through a few slides first, and I'll turn it over to Jason, but wanted to just set the context for what we're trying to do at Zenrock first, before we dive into all the detail and how the hackathon will be run, because we thought that might be helpful for people. Just a little context setting, just around the motivation for what we're doing. One of the things that obviously that we've seen in this space, one of the trends that we think will continue to evolve over the next few years is just the proliferation of chains. That's kind of something that I think has driven a lot of innovation in the space, as we all know, but it's also created issues for developers, and also I think in many ways it's degraded the user experience in many ways. Partly as a result of this, one of the areas where there's been a lot of growth has obviously been cross-chain bridges. People have to be able to move assets between ecosystems. People are trying to kind of join liquidity, for example. We've seen that through bridge volumes. There's been massive increase just since beginning of last year. And then just as another proxy, just looking at the number of applications that have integrated with layer 0, you have the chart there on the bottom right. There's just been a massive amount of activity. Also, just stepping back and thinking about just in an even broader sense of just the market for securing on-chain assets. Obviously, DeFi total value locked was obviously much higher in 21, but there's been a massive resurgence just over the past year or so. That's a broad proxy for the need to secure assets in DeFi, obviously. And there's also been a continued amount of security incidents, which a lot of those are centered around bridges, as we know, but just broadly, just hundreds of millions have been lost through private key compromises, as we've shown here on the right. So what are we trying to do? Like Jan mentioned, we have a permissionless open MPC protocol. Usually what people think about is, well, that's kind of an institutional custody solution, which I think that's a use case that could be interesting, and we can support that. But we're kind of also thinking about using MPC, I think, in a novel way, in a much more broad way, to try to solve some of the problems that I think developers face developing omni-chain applications. So when you look and see what's available today, the two main solutions that have been available just in terms of key management have been first multi-sig, and then there are a lot of just more traditional MPC providers. When we look at multi-sig, trying to solve kind of an omni-chain problem, it's not suitable. I would say that the biggest reason is it's kind of inherently, not cross-chain. It is protocol dependent. There's operational inflexibility. There's friction in terms of cost and speed. So that's something that I think could not be used in order to achieve kind of our goals. And then traditional MPC, I mean, I think also would not quite work because it's been mainly implemented in kind of a very centralized fashion. Usually it's accessed off-chain. Usually it's presented in a way to developers, I would say with a more TradFi economic model. Usually it's in the context of a wallet as a service offering, or with that kind of use case in mind, which is not quite suitable for what we're trying to do. So what do we do? We've done a number of things architecturally, from a business model perspective, from a technical perspective, to create a permissionless access to distributed MPC. And I'll kind of walk through a little bit about why that's important. But we think that a couple of these characteristics are quite profound in terms of what you can do with our platform. So one thing that we wanted to make sure that we kind of created as one of our design principles is making it open and permissionless. We want our solution to be available wherever developers are building. So we have on-chain access through smart contracts. We allow people to build on our Cosmos-based app chain called the ZR chain, and we also provide off-chain access. So we want to be kind of where developers are. It was also incredibly important to create a truly distributed MPC infrastructure. We'll get into kind of some of the things that we did to enable this, but thought that it was important to have, in order for people to use this in a cross-chain use case, being able to rely on a network of MPCs is much more suitable than kind of thinking about relying on bridges specifically, or for using centralized infrastructure. And we also want this to be open from a modularity perspective. So we felt that to really reach market adoption, we'd want this to be modular. So allow people to build on it in ways that suit them. So for example, we'll get into it a little bit, but we have a concept of something called key rings, where the first key ring that we're launching is our distributed MPC network. But we did not want that to be the only thing that was available. We leave it open so that people can develop their own solutions or plug in other providers. And we'll get into a little bit how that works. But the point of all this is if you sum all this up, I think what's interesting about what we've created is that we've unlocked kind of the performance and cost benefits of off-chain compute. That's kind of the MPC key management piece of it, but put it in a format that works for Web3 developers. So you can, I would say that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too from that perspective. And unless you do, I think, all three of these things, I think achieving the use cases I'm describing would not be possible. So let's just get into a little bit about how you would use this. So the idea, or one of the core premises of what we're trying to do, is to allow you to build an application on any chain, and then be able to control assets and control settlements on any other chain. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. One of the primary ways is through ZR Sign and/or the Zenrock chain. And what we've seen is, just from a performance perspective, that this can happen, up to say 4 times faster than using traditional methods. So I think from a usability perspective, if you're a developer, is that number one, this allows you to write your development all in the ecosystem of your choice. Like, we don't want to be in the position to make people develop only on our chain if they want to use our functionality. You can certainly do that. We hope people do that, but one of the core principles of our architecture is we want people to develop on Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, Solana, wherever they choose to develop, yet still be able to access our capabilities. You can build it all in one place, and yet, like I'm describing, being able to manage your keys, manage your assets across any chain from that one spot. We also enable MEV resistant transactions. There's a way that you can kind of configure the use of our service in order to do that. It's not required, but that's another option that we thought was obviously an important feature to enable for some use cases. So like I mentioned, there's a few different ways to access this. So on-chain, there's the ZR sign contracts. There will be a ZR sign contract deployed on all of the chains we support. We also allow developers to build on our Cosmos-based app chain, the ZR chain. There will be some benefits to that as well, which we'll get into. And then for off-chain access, we have something called ZR Access. That's off-chain APIs. Right now, that's hosted in the QuickNode marketplace for people who are building kind of an off-chain portion of their application. This is an overview of the architecture. Like I described, there's a couple different ways to access it. So there's ZR Sign. This is again sitting on multiple different chains to allow for access to the ZR chain. Also, one thing that we're super excited about, this is one of the premises of this hackathon, is we've also built an OAuth on layer 0 to also expose this functionality to any layer 0 endpoint. So that's in the middle, and then of course the off-chain API is represented here through QuickNode. All of these this whole access layer is pointing to the ZR chain. With the ZR chain, it enables a few different things. One is access to a policy engine. This can obviously be used in a traditional way, like you think about where there could be multiple signers for transactions. But one of the things that we've envisioned is also being able to use the policy engine more like a workflow engine, where there could be autonomous signing agents on different chains in order to create atomic transaction flows, where there's atomic settlements cross-chain using a policy engine. So we think that's a pretty powerful capability that could be utilized by accessing this. The ZR chain also manages all of the key rings. Like I mentioned, the first key ring that we've developed is the Zenrock NPC network. That's one of the key elements of the hackathon, but there could be other key rings. So we'll also have a KMS that we launch with, but you could plug in other providers into this. You could plug in Fireblocks, you could plug in another HSM solution. It could be someone who's building something where they want to have their own private key ring for certain use cases. That is all possible. But then as it relates to the Zenrock NPC network, we're starting with 2 parties that will be available today. So we're running one node, QuickNode is running another node, but the idea is by mainnet, which we expect, once testnet is fully stable and we've kind of fleshed out all the functionality we want to build out in a few months, I would expect there to be 5-10 different third-party operators in that network, and hopefully over time there could be 20. So the idea is that would be a layer that would be extremely resilient and extremely diversified relative to anything else that's available. So just double clicking a little bit on the MPC piece, like I said, there's a lot of MPCs in implementations that have been done. Like I said, they tend to be centralized. They tend to be what we call N of N, meaning if there's 2 nodes, both nodes must sign. I would say that plus off-chain only access is not really suitable for the things we're talking about in terms of allowing for a Web3 developer to build this composably into their own dApp. So what have we've had to do a few things kind of special to our MPC in order to make it work. So we started with, I would say, the kind of the bedrock of I'd say the leading paper in MPC, which is the 2021 paper by Gennaro, and built on top of that, enhanced it. So there's a few things that we've done, which has been quite a lot of I would say fundamental research and extra time to implement it, but it's something. These are all things that we think are required to actually make this work. So the first thing we did is extend from N of N to M of N, meaning if there's 10 nodes, we could have a threshold signing scheme of like three of the nodes must sign of the 10 in order for a transaction to be approved. I think that's a really important fact if you're going to build a decentralized network, because as the network grows, we wouldn't want to have performance degraded as new nodes were added to the network. We've also done things just to make sure that we have as high performance as possible, like a non-interactive signature scheme. We'll get into kind of the nuances of that, but I would just say that's something that enhances signing performance. We've done a lot in order to reduce trust assumptions. So this network, this MPC network will have to be permissioned. We've taken a number of steps in order to reduce the trust assumptions within the network, though, which we think is important. One is proactive key refreshes, which reduces the window by which any two parties could collude. And then we've also added something called identifiable aborts. This is something that basically is within the protocol that detects bad actors or detects a node that is not performing or acting in an odd manner and removes them from the protocol. So we think this is a really important step that I think wouldn't exist in other implementations. And also, very importantly, we're adding support for EDDSA keys. The paper in which we're building on is ECDSA based, but given kind of our objective to build an omni-chain application, we thought that it was important to also support EDDSA, which notably enables us to also include Solana and some of the other networks that we thought were important to include. Another thing we've done architecturally, which we felt was really important, is focus a lot on the economic security of our chain. There's a native token that will be staked to secure our chain called the Rock token. But one of the things we thought about is, as assets grew, we hope the assets on chain will grow very quickly. We wanted to make sure at all times we had enough economic security to protect those assets. So we've created, or we've implemented our own AVS for EigenLayer, so that we'll have the security of Ethereum also supporting our ZR chain, and we've designed this to be flexible so that depending on the economic security of our Rock token, we'll be able to dial up and dial down the amount of economic security that's basically borrowed from EigenLayer. So this is something that I don't think has ever been done before. There's of course other AVSs, but I think that in the context of building kind of a cross-chain security protocol, we felt this was kind of a foundational element in order to achieve everything we're doing. Lastly, I would just note here we have a few initial ecosystem partners. QuickNode is one of them. They provide us some RPC infrastructure. Like I said, our off-chain APIs are available through them, and they're the first third party running an MPC node. We'll be adding a bunch more of those soon. And then Layer Zero has been a great partner for us. We actually operate one of their DVNs, which is a core security component of their own architecture. But we've also developed our own OAuth, which is I think fantastic for us because it extends the functionality of what we've created to any chain that we haven't deployed ZR sign on. So basically anywhere where you're sitting in a Layer Zero endpoint, the idea is you'd be able to access ZR chain and all of its capabilities. So we hope that adds a lot of value to us, and we hope that this adds a lot of value just to the broader Layer Zero community as we can provide this service to them. And also, I think initially, one thing that we'll be adding is access for any Layer Zero builder to actually access native Bitcoin assets, because Bitcoin chain will be one of our integrated chains. So we think that could be valuable for for a subset of Layer 0 users as well. So super excited about that partnership. And also, one of the judges for the hackathon will be from Layer 0. I don't think he's on today, but he'll obviously be focused on Layer 0 specific implementations. So that's what I had for the overview. If there's questions on anything that I went over, we'd love to cover that at the end. But we'd like to dig a little bit more into specifics around the hackathon. Jason's going to take us through that, and then we have a few more people on the line. Our kind of lead engineers that have built a lot of this, that have done a ton of work, certainly over the last 6 months to get us to where we are, and we'll be leading us through that, and also will be leading us through some of the office hours, which we'll go through. So you'll have time to directly interact with them and ask questions, of course, along the way. So thanks a lot for the time, and Jason, why don't you take it from here?
Sure. Thanks, Randy. So great overview. I think, a few things to just kind of highlight. The main premise of what we're building here is to abstract a lot of the complexity around key management and security to make it easy for developers. I love the term undifferentiated heavy lifting. So we're trying to make it really simple and as straightforward as possible to build cross-chain, secure, highly performant, decentralized applications. So that's the crux of what we're building here. And what we'll get into next are, some of the specific use cases that we envision for the hackathon. And certainly this is not meant to be, something where we stay within the lines. We certainly call on the development community to be creative, give us ideas, suggestions. This is an initial set that we've thought of, that we think kind of kick the tires of the solutions that we have built. But would love to obviously get other feedback, things that we can improve. These are tools that we have built by developers for developers. So we want to hear your feedback. Let me share my screen out and we can cover off some specific logistics related to the hackathon. So let me do that momentarily. Let me share my screen out. Let me get the right one. Go. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Good?
Yep.
All right, excellent. So we'll start with logistics first, because I'm sure everyone wants to know how you're going to get support throughout this hackathon schedule. So obviously we're kicking off today with this opening ceremony. As Jan mentioned, it ends on August 2nd. We will go through all the submissions after that date, review them based upon the judging criteria, which I'll get into as well. But we have office hours set up, and there may be a few others that we add here, but we have 4 office hours that are currently scheduled. These are in Eastern time, GMT -5 currently. I'll add that in just to make it clear. But starting on Wednesday, then we'll have another one on the following Monday, on the 22nd, the 24th, and July 26th as well. And based upon needs and feedback that we get, we may add additional office hours sessions in order to get support for you all as you go through the build process. I'll also highlight that we have a Discord that is set up. If you haven't joined our Discord, please do so. You can direct link to a developer support topic group within our Discord and post any questions that you have within there. All the folks on this call, as well as additional engineers on the team, are monitoring that every day, and will respond as promptly as possible to your inquiries there. As Jan mentioned, we have a prize pool of 30,000 USD that we've set aside for the top 3 submissions, with first prize being 15,000, second 10, and third prize 5,000. Let's go to the judging criteria first, and then I'll jump back up to the quests. So the judging criteria that we will use for those submissions are broken down as follows across these 5 categories. So innovation and creativity. So things that we're looking for there are originality of the ideas. As I said, we put some thoughts out there to help spur some thought process around the different quests. But obviously, if you go off playbook and come up with something really new and creative that maybe we haven't even thought of, that will weigh heavily into the judging criteria, as well as your creativity and how you solve that problem. The technical difficulty, we want to reward those that take on the challenge of building a really compelling cross-chain DApp, and also the quality of the implementation. So we want to make sure that we're rewarding those folks that are focusing on technical excellence as well as high quality solutions for these submissions. And then completeness of the prototype and what you've done. That would include any user interface and user experience elements where applicable. If you have something that is not UI based, that's fine as well, but it should be easy for other developers to consume. So general usability, I would say, falls into that category. And then the impact. How much does this prototype that you've put together in your submission for the hackathon actually drive an omni-chain ecosystem? We're really focusing in on these cross-chain use cases. So the practicality, feasibility, the likelihood of widespread adoption will factor in there heavily. And then documentation and presentation. So making sure that you've got really good documentation of what you've done, and we'll use that in the judging criteria as well. But as you can see, it's more heavily weighted to innovation and creativity, as well as the technical design and technical integrity of the system. As we look through suggested quests that the team has put together, again, this is not an exhaustive list of activities, but a few themes that we've identified, as well as particular use cases within those themes that we see. Minting and wrapping tokens. These are things that you can do using ZRSign, and in particular the ZRSign Direct. So as Randy mentioned, ZRSign is a smart contract that interfaces with our MPCs and also with ZR Chain. So we have two different derivations of ZRSign, one called ZRSign Direct, one called ZRSign Omni. ZRSign Direct is the smart contract that interacts directly with our MPCs and manages keys on the ZRSign smart contract. ZRSign Omni is an implementation of ZRSign that integrates with ZR Chain and essentially is a mirror of ZR Chain to other chains that are not ZR Chain native. So being able to take advantage of ZR Chain capabilities, as Randy mentioned, things like policies, being able to leverage the policy engine, key rings, those sorts of things. Obviously, ZR Chain is still in active development. We just launched mainnet last week, or sorry, testnet last week. Mainnet will follow on in a few months, depending upon how things go with testnet. But as we start to enhance ZR Chain, you'll start to see additional capabilities trickle in for ZRSign Omni. For the scope of this particular hackathon, ZRSign Direct, I think, is the most applicable, as well as its interaction with the OAuth. There are some features of ZRSign Omni that will come into play as well. But getting back to minting and wrapping tokens, using ZRSign on something like a MOI, for example, to mint ETH on Blast is an interesting use case that we'd put forth. And doing the same thing through Layer 0 OAuth is another kind of key proof point. So as Randy mentioned, all of our technology, we're positioning it and architecting it to be wherever builders are. So if you're on the Layer 0 ecosystem and interact with ZRSign via an OAuth, you can do the same type of functionality of minting ZR ETH on Blast, for example. As well as potentially building a wrap token service, something like Pepe on Osmosis. User interface development, we've focused on builder tools. So we haven't focused a lot on UI. We do have a UI on top of the ZR chain testnet, but we don't have a UI for ZR sign. So if you'd like to build UIs, go for it. This is a great opportunity to build an interface on top of ZR sign to interact with it. This is a tool that other developers can build. We're likely going to build something similar as well, but we can take the best of breed here and pull it into play for UI on top of ZR sign. As well as building a portfolio view, extending the existing user interface that we have for the Zenrock chain. As it relates to application development, building a layer 0 OAuth and interacting with different use cases that you can think of, working through ZR sign. A decentralized finance platform, so use cases such as lend, borrow, earning interest and yield across multiple blockchains. That's one of the things that we see as a compelling use case for our cross-chain flow, is that we can pull together a lot of fragmentation that exists across these different blockchains and that fragmented liquidity. So being able to conglomerate all of that together, pull that together, is a key feature in application development. Cross-chain interoperability, building a token bridge that transfers tokens across different blockchains. Again, leveraging the underlying MPC technology that we have instead of multi-sig. Building a cross-chain collateral ABS is also one that we think is an interesting use case to ponder. We encourage folks to tackle that one as well. And then applying that same design to a cross-chain ecosystem transaction, going from EVM to Cosmos to Bitcoin. Later within the scope of our testnet, we'll have support for Solana as well. That's still work in progress. So that's not fully implemented yet, but we will have Bitcoin support. For wallet and key management, building wallet integrations for creating unsigned transactions, sending that to the Zenrock chain to then be signed by our MPCs. These are other scenarios that we envision. So we're focusing not only on dApps that are being built, but also wallet integrators as well. So if you want to build a wallet integration for leveraging our technology for key management, certainly within the scope of this hackathon. And then things that you can also do, these are kind of more over the horizon type things to consider, like identity abstraction, being able to use something like our public keys and workspaces and key rotation to create a decentralized identity standard. I think is also an interesting use case to explore. And then, as Randy mentioned, we have a pluggable keyring architecture, modular keyring architecture. So build your own keyring, add a custom keyring. All of these things can be done with ZR chain. So as we kind of explore the overall vision of Zenrock, one of the key components and premises is our modularity and being able to extend. So we have opinions around kind of our technology stack, but that's not meant to be a closed system. It's fully extensible. So add a custom keyring. And then COSM-WASM implementation. So currently the ZR Sign smart contract, Solidity-based contract, but we will be building a COSM-WASM implementation of it. But certainly you can do so as well to wrap the ZR Sign functionality within COSM-WASM Rust-based implementation. And then bugs. This is new. We know things are going to be discovered. You're going to find bugs. You're going to find things that need improvement. That can be both in code and in documentation. All of these will be considered as well in the overall judging criteria. Certainly an emphasis on those related to security. Security is the foundational component of everything that we're doing. So if you find something that's security related, that will be considered highly in the criteria that we evaluate. So with all of that, I would like to kind of turn it over to Martin, Benamir, Val, Chris. Any commentary that you guys would like to add around, thoughts that you would put forth for developers as they're diving in here, where to get started? I've got a link in here for our documentation, but how would you think about bringing on board another developer to start building with this tool set and to address these use cases that we've identified?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Sorry, Benjamin. I just want to emphasize that when we're creating keys with our MPCs and store them, they essentially become something like a remote controller for reusing them on multiple chains at the same time. And this is something I think is really compelling because you don't have to worry about switching chains. You can build like one smart contract, one dApp that interacts with many use cases across different networks simultaneously. And you can kind of build something that transcends these borders and, so to say, pre-choose the use case already for your users. And this is a thought I just want to share with you. Maybe it sparks creativity. You come up with cool ideas and maybe even new kinds of use cases that are going truly cross-chain. And I think this is something I want to add regarding use cases. Benimir.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Martin. Go ahead, Benamir.
For me, will be quite interesting to see autonomous contract, how manage cross-chain, how it manages cross-chain assets. For example, autonomous bridge that manage different cross-chain wrappings and unwrappings, and that's available because of our EOAs. And when we have Bitcoin onboarded, for me will be quite interesting to see such bridge that will manage Bitcoin wraps and unwraps without any private keys, only through the MPCs. And yeah.
Yeah, Benamir, can you highlight how the addresses that we're generating through our MPC function as like EOAs? Because I think that's a really kind of compelling part of what we're building is the fact that these act like externally owned accounts. So I think maybe dig into that, double click on that if you would, please.
Yeah, so when you request key, you have two options. We have a default EOA key and plus EOA key. The difference is that the second one is with monitoring, because we've implemented this simple TX where our system will be able to fetch the gas limit, gas price, and the nonce for your output transaction on the destination chain. That's maybe this is cool for EVMs, but for Bitcoin is necessarily it's mandatory. But yeah, well, EOAs are in my opinion more flexible in terms of signing and in terms of how to say it, in terms of speed and flexibility, because you can even deploy a contract on the destination chain from the source chain. For example, a factory pattern can deploy a contract on the destination chain from a different source chains. Yeah, and I think
yeah. So
yep.
Yep. So I was just saying, like that, just that whole paradigm, I think, opens the door to a lot of interesting use cases. The factory pattern that you mentioned, I think, is a really interesting one to explore as well. That's why I wanted to kind of highlight a bit of the detail to get kind of the creative juices of the devs on this to be thinking about that. Like, what can you do when you can generate an EOA from a source chain onto a destination chain? What are the types of things that you can do with that? And I think that those unlock some really interesting use cases.
Yeah, well, the system is so generic that you can do whatever you want, literally. I
Yeah.
mean, and one of the pluses is that when you generate EVM address, it's available to all EVM, so you don't need to,
Exactly.
for example, request a new key, or for example, deploy a new contract on the destination chain to go there. And yeah.
Exactly. Great. Thanks, Benamir. Val, I want to call on you next, since you've been hot and heavy into the layer zero integration and OAP work. What are some of the things that you've discovered in your layer zero development of the OAP that you would throw out for developers to kind of ponder and chew on as they think about interesting use cases with LZ that could be tackled as part of this hackathon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's topping on on top of what Venimir and Martin mentioned, because what we offer is a very generic solution. It basically it's like whatever you can think of, more or less, you can build with this key management that we provide. With the Layer Zero OAP, what we currently have is like our first iteration of our OAP, which basically piggybacks off the ZR Sign product that we have, which basically gives us the MPC functionality on chain. And with Layer Zero OAP, we've expanded that to be able to interact with ZR Sign and MPC through ZR Sign from chains where we don't even have it deployed yet. So in the case of our OAP, basically, we could have our OAP deployed on a chain where ZR Sign does not exist, it's not deployed, and have a user remotely interact with a ZR Sign implementation on a chain where we support it, to be able to invoke functionalities with a key. So he creates a key. He can sign and send transactions through the OAP from the remote ZR Sign. But that's I guess that could be just one initial functionality that an OAP can provide. You could build basically anything, because like Layer Zero provides you with like the messaging bus, which communicates with a lot of chains. Then ZR Sign provides you with the key management. So combining both of those functionalities could allow you to build a lot of different products. So it could be a DApp, could be like a decentralized DAO with voting, could be basically anything.
Yeah, I think that's the really powerful part of what we've done is genericize the implementation while focusing on the specifics of the specifics of the MPC and the Zenrock chain functionality that we've built to provide some of those other higher level constructs. But this is not locking anyone into a closed system. This is an entirely open system, as you were saying, Val. You know, we're not even limited to where ZR Sign is deployed. Someone from Layer Zero can build an OAP on a chain where ZR Sign doesn't exist. From that source chain on Layer Zero, call into a destination chain where ZR Sign is deployed, and then from ZR Sign interact with the MPCs. So it really is, I think, expanding the playing field of the ecosystems in which developers can build, which I think is the really cool part of what we've done here. Cool, thanks. Last but certainly not least, because it's one of my favorite topics, is Bitcoin. and Chris is our resident Bitcoin expert. So Chris, I'd like for you to kind of highlight some of the capabilities that we have with Zenrock Chain and Bitcoin that we have coming along in development.
So one of the difficulties or the differences, the core differences between Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies, of course, one's account-based and Bitcoin is UTXO-based. And that causes a number of problems because it's not just a question of creating a transaction, getting it signed and broadcasting it. You have to collect the unspent transactions together, the UTXOs, work out how many you need to send some funds to somewhere, and then get each part of that transaction signed individually, and then munge them all together to make a final transaction and broadcast it to the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, that's complicated. I mean, we wanted to abstract that away from the users. So every type of transaction that you might want to do on the Zenrock chain is similar in the way you do it. So we have a back-end Bitcoin service that handles all of that transaction generation, the monitoring of the chain for you. So you might say, I want to send from my address. You'll create an address. The Zenrock chain will create your Bitcoin address, and the backend server will start monitoring that. And whenever you get deposits in there, you can query it and say, how much have I got in there? And it'll tell you. And then you'd say, I want to send 0.1 Bitcoin from my address to this destination, and I want a high transaction fee. And it will generate the transaction for you with all the UTXOs in. It'll extract the hashes. So you can check that and see, yep, that's what I want to sign. Send that to Zenrock. Zenrock will send it to the NPCs. The NPCs will sign it. It'll get back to the Zenrock chain, all behind the scenes, and the backend proxy Bitcoin proxy will pick that up, insert the signatures automatically, and broadcast it out to the Bitcoin chain. So all of the untrusted stuff is done transparently in the background for you, and all of the stuff that you might want to have interaction with, how much am I sending? Am I really signing that transaction? Does that look is a transaction that I'm going to get signed the one I really intend to get signed? All of those things you have input into. All the other stuff that you don't really care about, you just want it to get on with it, is all done behind the scenes. So if you can make a service that works with Ethereum or Solana, then adding in Bitcoin at a later stage should be relatively straightforward. And we're very close to adding Bitcoin onto the Zenrock chain. I'm just going through the last sort of testing processes over the next few days.
Yep. And that all of that proxy middleware that Chris is referring to, we're packaging up so that anyone can run that. So it doesn't have to be resident within our infrastructure as well. That's a key design principle that we've taken with everything. So decentralized blockchain, decentralized distributed MPC layer, and any of the middleware services, relayers, proxies, all of these things. We'll operate some, but certainly anyone can operate them as part of the network. So there is no single source of failure, no single source, no single entity that controls the network from tip to tail.
And the same is available for ZR Sign, will be available
Correct.
for ZR. And that's why we've implemented this simple TX where because a smart contract cannot query a Bitcoin node and calculate all those UTXOs. That's why we've implemented simple TX where the user can simply, the DApp can simply send a request to that address with a value parameter, and the whole fetching will happen with this Bitcoin proxy and so on and so forth. So the transaction will be broadcasted. You don't need even to calculate the fee. It will be calculated out.
Great. Well, thanks for everyone on the team. Martin, Venomir, Val, Chris, great insight. Hopefully this gets some of the creative juices flowing as well of what you can do with what we built. And obviously, please think of things that we haven't thought of. Totally open to feedback and suggestions, other use cases that we may not have even considered. Last couple of pieces to round out the logistics of the hackathon. Judging, so we talked about the judging criteria. The judges that will participate are myself, Martin, Chris, Benamir, Val as well. Sorry, that was an administrative error on my side. I'll get that updated. And Matt Crack from the Layer Zero Labs team will also be part of the judges panel. So after the close of the hackathon on August 2nd, we'll review the submissions, weighing against the criteria that we've outlined, and we'll award prizes the week of August 5th. So shortly after the hackathon closes, we'll spend our time, obviously, as submissions come in, we'll review them as they come in. So we're not going to wait until the end, but we will be in position to award the winners and prizes the week of August 5th. So with that, I think that concludes our portion of the opening ceremony. Jan, Randy, any closing thoughts? Hope this has been useful to get those creative juices flowing and give you a bit more insight as to what we built and what you can do with the technology stack.
I would just say, Jan, I don't know if there's any questions, but if not, I mean, as you can see, we're super excited about what we've created here and what the potential is for it. I think that we're definitely looking forward to engaging with everyone, throughout the process. I think we can be quite available. We're very interested in kind of your ideas, your feedback. This is something we've been working on for a little while and are just really excited to see how people use it.
Yeah, likewise, super excited to see all the incredible projects building on top of Zenrock Chain, and very curious to see what will be the outcome of this hackathon. So I guess that would be it for this opening ceremony. Happy building to all the hackers, and excited about like all the upcoming workshops and developer hours.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.